Hey everyone, welcome to this weekly Sidereal Astrology forecast for the week of September 1st to the 7th of 2025. All right, so this week we have a lunar eclipse at the end of the week. This is building momentum as we approach that and really starting to get into what's likely very important shifts and changes to our life path. And I would say from a yearly sense, but also a multi-year sense, since this will be the first lunar eclipse in Aquarius as part of this lunar eclipse cycle, this 19 years eclipse cycle, and it will be the North Node. So in this case, new beginnings with accessing more of our eccentric side, our individualism, challenging the status quo, and most importantly is really connecting to that visionary side of ourselves in terms of our own future aspirations, but maybe also in terms of the world or that kind of future, or even collective things like groups, friends, network circles, basically being a part of things that are greater than ourselves. So very likely new beginnings here, but all through perhaps a pivot and a shift along our journey. So as we approach that, we do have Mercury squaring up to Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius. This will be on Wednesday, and we do have some other squares this week. So definitely a week of challenging ourselves, and that's usually the case with eclipse months anyways. So in this case with Mercury on Wednesday, maybe thinking outside the box, challenging our own status quo a little bit, experimenting, all of this as consciously and constructively as we can, as we might be feeling maybe a little bit erratic or anxious or sort of impulsive with this kind of transit. So good to ground that constructively. Thursday's square with Mars square Jupiter actually usually comes across a little more positive since it's involving Jupiter, but we want to make sure that we're not going to any over or under extreme. So here maybe optimism, hopefulness, inspiration can be strong, motivation and drive can be strong as well, and so channeling that constructively. And then lastly, over the weekend, Uranus will be going retrograde, so a little bit of reworking with some of this Aquarius type of stuff. And Venus is going to go into Leo as well, going into next week. So let's go and take a look at all of this here in more detail when we return. Alrighty, so here's the sky for this week. We're going to look at this for each day of the week, starting first with Monday, September 1st. And as you can see here, we are using the visible sky on this channel, which is very different from mainstream astrology. You won't hear me mention, you won't hear this mentioned anywhere else outside of the true sidereal community, these particular placements and such, because unfortunately mainstream does not use the visible sky. And so the signs are different. You might be expecting maybe the sun to be in Virgo, but here we're saying that the sun is in Leo. So if you are new to this, definitely check out that link down below for more information. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's just do a quick recap since we had some sign changes last week. So of course the sun is in Leo, now Mercury's in Leo. So the main theme of this lunar month, which started about a week ago, if you're watching this at the beginning of this week, and so this has really been about expression, self-expression. Leo's all about cultivating more of the things that we love and are close to our hearts. And so really good to focus on this, really good to now think and communicate this more expressive way with Mercury here as well. Now, with that being said, Venus is in Cancer, so we still have that more emotional and personal energy. And here it's to be enjoyed and connected to. And perhaps even in our relationships as well, we can notice a little bit more of that protective energy for ourselves and others, creating that safe environment for those that we consider personal or like family. This can all make those personal relationships more, more richer, more secure, and more emotionally connected. Mars in Virgo, right in the middle of Virgo now. It's been over a month, almost a couple months here. Mars really being about our assertive side, and Virgo being about improvement. And so when it's come to what we're putting energy into, how we're asserting ourselves, where we're taking initiative, it's been very good to be very methodical, very improvement oriented, very self-disciplined. And in this way, it can be and continue to be very constructive here. Okay, so these sort of staggered signs with the fast movers, protective Cancer, with the main focus on expressive Leo and a lot of that methodical Virgo as well. So starting the week off here, we will be coming off of what is the first quarter moon from the weekend. So this week we'll probably actually notice the bulk of it is more like coming out of any major actions or tensions and starting to build momentum. And that's the momentum we'll be building as we get closer and closer to Sunday's lunar eclipse. Now on Monday, the early part will have the moon in Ophiuchus. And so also an energy from the weekend is that early Monday could be deep, maybe healing, but also very transformative, depending on where you are in the world at some point around Monday. There will be that metamorphosis of the moon passing over the galactic center right here at the end of Ophiuchus. And so this is very much the death and rebirth type of energy. And so from here, getting into more of that expansive side of Sagittarius, that's going to take us from late Monday, but all day Tuesday and Wednesday, themes around expanding our mental and literal horizons. Sagittarius is about thinking big. It's about listening to our aspirations. It's about possibilities and potentials for the future. And so the sense of expanding our horizons is absolutely great and a good way of working with this early part of the week. Now, when we do get to that Wednesday time, Mercury will be squaring up to Uranus. And so this really brings that Aquarius theme to the mix. And here it could be a bit challenging to work with. So earlier we talked about Aquarius being about some of that visionary energy, some of that eccentric energy, some of that individualism. And so these thoughts and these perhaps energies in our day-to-day life could be quite emphasized around Wednesday, usually to an over or even under extreme. So an over extreme might be feeling like maybe breaking outside of the norm, maybe, rebellion, challenging the status quo to some extent, to some extreme extent. And this idea of maybe just feeling a bit restless or impulsive or anxious or whatever it might be here. So good to be aware that the true self is trying to come through. This is what Uranus and Aquarius are really showing us, is to access that higher self of excitement. That expression, listen to your excitement. This is very much applicable here this week, but we want to make sure that that's done constructively. So being aware of any of those impulses, being aware of that need, and then consciously applying it forward. In this way, it's great to think outside the box. It's great to challenge our own status quo, right? What are our comfort zones? What are we used to that we can, now start to get outside of and explore and experiment with different ways of approaching life. And in this way, it becomes very constructive. This could also be very good for new ideas, thinking outside the box, innovative ideas and communications. But again, likely coming through constructively with that mindfulness. So as we start to get into this Thursday onward, first of all, the moon will shift into Capricorn late Thursday, and we'll be in Capricorn until Saturday. So we'll call it Thursday and Friday here. This theme around really being disciplined. And it's a week of a lot of this more, again, high frequency, visionary, erratic kind of energy with Uranus and, of course, Aquarius. But this middle part, or this late to middle part, Thursday and Friday, really calls for us to have a little bit of that patience. And so a good couple days here for things like responsibility, seeing the long road, some of that persistence that Capricorn helps us with. And that can help actually ground what is typically quite a buoyant transit, Mars squaring up to expansive Jupiter. So we said how Mars is that assertive side, and in a square to Jupiter can really pull to the over and under extremes of that. So we can feel maybe very assertive, very confident, very even optimistic, but then on the other extreme, maybe the opposite, maybe passive aggressive, maybe not optimistic or even pessimistic, maybe feeling like we can't pursue what we want. So it's a pendulum swing usually with this, and either extreme is of course the challenge, but there is a middle path. And I think some of the great middle paths with this square is to, yes, listen to that sense of optimism, listen to that sense of free-spiritedness, but to channel it again constructively. And here, how can we align what we want, our goals, our actions towards possibilities, towards potentials, but where it's grounded? Because we may feel, like it may be very easy. We might just think it's going to come regardless of the kind of actions we take, or we might be pushing too much. So just saying that, yes, optimism is important, but at the same time, grounding it, at the same time, implementing it, being constructive with it, and then the square becomes very, very powerful. Here, we really combine that Capricorn energy of discipline with what the square is already calling us to do, which is this sense of really grounding that kind of more higher Jupiterian energy that can be a bit either scattered or, again, pendulum swinging with a square like this. Okay, but the square is, again, very constructive. This can actually be a very constructive week, things really moving forward, actions being taken. This is what squares are fundamentally about. So as we start to get into the weekend here, going into late Friday and into Saturday, Uranus will go station. We usually don't feel these personally unless you have a very strong Aquarius or Aquarius rising in your chart. But there's a pause here with some of that higher self we were talking about. So for the next 6 months, this happens every year, nothing major, but for the next 6 months, it's good to take a little bit of a reflective and inward process to understanding more about what our higher self needs, what that excitement needs. And in this case, perhaps going back and reworking on some things from the prior 6 months that maybe we did implement that did involve more freedom in our life. Maybe they were some aspirations. Maybe there were things that we were experimenting with that now we can approach a little bit differently the next 6 months. We can reflect on, we can have more of that internal process to pull out really that, again, true self and that excitement in a much more true, authentic, and deeper sort of way. So anyways, over this, early part of the weekend, just pausing a little bit to reflect on some of that true self, some of that true self's needs, some of that excitements, and in this way, getting ready for some reworking there. But that's essentially what this lunar eclipse is helping us do anyways. So the lunar eclipse, again, in Aquarius on Sunday, giving us the halfway point of this Leo lunar cycle. So status check is really the fundamental thing here. How has the past, again, 6 months been going since the last time we've had eclipses? And in this context, in a very new context, now we're adding the Aquarius side, which is very new because the past really over 2 years, we've had the Virgo and Pisces eclipses. And now we're having, for the first time in this cycle, the Leo Aquarius axes. And so here, really, again, illuminating, and this can be a very insightful weekend. We can become very much aware of what our true self needs, what gives us excitement, etc. And with that, we can make some very important, like I said, shifts and changes to the life journey. So typically, with all eclipses, we want to be very spiritual and very mindful. But this one is both a north node, which is very much about future implementation, action, and is also the full moon of the lunar eclipse, which is also about implementation and action. So while, of course, being mindful and aware, still recognizing that this is very likely a great time to make some important shifts and changes. There's not a rush to do it. It doesn't even have to happen this month, but we're starting to get that awareness here around Sunday, and perhaps there are some pivots, some shifts of direction that we can make so that our life is more healthfully Aquarian, or just bringing in more Aquarius in some new and different ways. Again, freedom, individuality, eccentricity, more of our unique self, listening to our aspirations, and maybe also getting involved in community or groups or the world at large in some way as well. Okay, so contribution is the name of the game. Tapping into that individualism of self in order to be a part of something greater than ourselves. All right, all in all, the lunar eclipse here doesn't have any major squares with it. It will be opposite up to Mercury, but this is very common. Mercury is usually next to the sun anyways. So just balancing out some of that really Leo energy. I would say here is that, of course, in order to do that Aquarius stuff healthfully, that individualism and that sort of contribution, we do want to stay rooted in what we love, right, in our hearts and what energizes us. And so, while it's a great time to be aspiring, staying connected to our heart, staying connected to our passions, to what we love, continue to focus on that. That's really what this is about. This is really being cleared and released because this is where the south node is. We'll have the sun and Mercury going over the south node next week. So there's a lot of clearing with the Leo, but we want to maintain our roots in that. So what I would say is in everything we do, great to be rooted right now in self-expression, in fun, in passion, but without giving it too much focus. Just like the roots of the tree, the roots don't try to grow. They don't try to drill through rock or hard places. They grow through the areas of least resistance, and they firmly anchor the tree, and it conserves energy, right, and receives energy from life. This is how we want to be with Leo, with the self-expression, with the passion, with the love. So while we're rooted with that, we want to again focus on aspiration and contribution. And in this way, we really mitigate that balance there. And there's a trine to Jupiter as well, which is nice to see. Could be a good time for some learning, some communication, some of that practical Gemini energy. Okay, and then we'll talk about this more next week, but Venus is going to be entering Leo as well. So just really adding to that expressive quality, probably coming through more in our relationships. All right, everyone, so that's the week in a nutshell. So just put very simply, the most important event of this week is the lunar eclipse, which is on Sunday. And as we approach that, we're building momentum and building to what will be a status check, what will be a shift and change along the life journey, although it could take days, weeks, or even months in the whole yearly cycle with eclipses. But getting that insight nonetheless, and starting some new things with that excitement or with that contribution that Aquarius can give us. Now, as we approach that, we do have squares this week, so it's a good week for just being grounded in terms of implementing things constructively. On Wednesday, with some of that eccentric mind or communications, channeling that intentionally, which can be new ideas, new implementations, challenging our own thoughts or way we go about our day-to-day life, maybe mixing up the routine in constructive ways. Okay, it's on Wednesday. And then the Mars square Jupiter, which will be Thursday and Friday. More about expanding our horizons, but doing that constructively as well. If there is confidence, great. Channel it constructively. If there is optimism, great. Channel it constructively, because we want to make sure that both are incorporated, both the possibilities and the work, because Jupiter's the possibilities, the square is the work, plus that moon in Capricorn can really help us do that. Okay, and then really not even worth really mentioning because it's such a slow-moving planet, but Uranus is going retrograde this weekend. So a little bit of reworking, rethinking. What is our excitement? What is the true self? This is all going to help us facilitate not only these shifts and changes with the lunar eclipse, but like I said, really for the next couple years is we'll have a series of these eclipses in these signs. All right, so everyone have a fantastic week. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to click the like button if you're watching this on YouTube, and stay tuned for the live stream. We go live every Sunday here at 1:15 p.m. Eastern Time of the Americas. You can find the link there on the YouTube channel, and they're now ran by Anna Maria, which is a new addition here at MTZ, and so she's going in depth, giving readings and talking about very interesting topics. So do stay tuned for that, and it's a great way to connect to the community, so hope to see you there. All right, take care. Bye-bye.